The Wayne Cook posture you can do in a sitting position. That is to put one leg on top of the other. Now for the hand placement, notice what side your foot is on. Raise that hand and then lower it on your ankle. Then take the other hand and put it on the bottom of the sole of the foot. And then you hold, you breathe in, which straightens up your spine. You do not need to be dramatic with your breath, but just make sure you understand when you're breathing in, you're kind of pulling in your foot just a little to help straighten up your spine. You want the energy to flow. Remember to watch the other video to show how to test for if you're out. Then you do the other side. Again, raise your hand, put it down on your ankle, take your other hand and put it at the bottom of your foot. And you hold and do the same thing as you did the other side. I recommend doing at least 3 to 7 reps of breathing in and relaxing. This will help get the energy moving. Put your feet down on the floor, no crossing them. And then you're going to put your hands together. Make sure that your thumbs, because you're going to be placing it right in the middle of your eyebrows. And you're going to go just like this. And you're going to breathe in and out. Anywhere from 3 to 5 breaths. And that's it. This is the Wayne Cook posture alternative. You can do this standing or you can do it sitting. You just cross your ankles. And then you put your arms out. Cross them, turn, grab, pull up, and then you breathe. Remembering to straighten up the spine. And remember to belly breathe. Don't just fill up the chest cavity. Fill up the stomach. Release. Now release your ankles. Switch and put the other ankle on top. And put your other arm across. Bring it in. If you're unable to do that, that's okay. One side is fine. Some people have a hard time doing this part. That's fine. Just put your hands together the best way you can. Don't hurt yourself. Separate your ankles, separate your hands. And when you're sitting at a desk, you can just go like this. And they say, what are you doing? You say, oh, just taking a break. Just taking a break. Everybody understands stress, so they're just assuming that you're doing nothing. Again, I want you to breathe in and out 3 to 7 times for each position that you do. I want you to understand that I respect everything about you. We want to create a non-judgmental space, and we're learning about life. Life is the way we used to is learning how to communicate and then take offense and then we pull away, and it was always just about being an extrovert or introvert, pulling away. You know, what are we doing with the energy? It all boils down to frequency, okay? And that frequency is what people don't get to see and understand and read what that is. So as time moved on, I started to learn about the soul's language and how it speaks to us every single moment of our humanistic life. We separated human self versus the spirituality because most of the time we would say it has to do with religion. We divided it up intentionally by our soul to really get to know, who am I? Okay, what is love? And you have to know these by finding out what you're not and what isn't. And then you have to create a growth process of change. The old way was very harsh. You had to bend your will and force you to do this, and it causes you to become the human you are today, to be so over-identified with your identities of pain and suffering, the definitions of life, that it's almost hard to connect with that inner peace. Because in our brain, okay, is what they call the caudate nucleus. And the caudate nucleus is the first thing after the information goes through our brain, okay, so our frontal lobe and our gray matter, it has to come up to a caudate nucleus. And inside the caudate nucleus can only be two things. It's going to be fear, or it's going to be the state of joy. Most of them is full of fear, unresolved continued stories. It is how we ended up taking a moment in our time, and it became out of sync, and now the energies are dictating how we're supposed to interact with our creation of thought. Now, life wouldn't exist without a thought. We are a thought. We have chosen, because what we are is spirit first. That's our true identity. Each one of us is a mirror image of the point which we call God, or the spirit point, okay? So just imagine a great big void with no boundaries, no framework at all, gone. So it's endless no matter which way you look. You're the observer. And the void contemplated itself. It folded in and contemplated and created a point. That point was imagined, let it traveled here, and like, oh, well, I didn't really travel here because there is no there. And then so it'd run over there saying, oh, I'm over there. Wait a minute. I can't be here there because there's no here. And so there was no frame of reference. So when the point decided to contemplate one more time, then created a mirror image. This mirror image is what creates consciousness, the time, and the information. So all this is what's between you and God. The difference between you and God is that you have a soul that is a recorder. It is meant to record your journey, your personalized journey. Now you're hooked with groups all over, the soul groups all over, because you're meant to discover and learn and to grow, create dimensions. It's all of these coming down from the point of involution, meaning coming down, and coming to the different planes of existence. And the best way to explain that would be, every time light refracts through a thought, it then has to create more light or less light, but one way or the other it creates a different frequency, which means you just created something to come into being, whether it is something you see on a physical level, or something that you can notice, or I should say observe, on another level. So now, Jen, you had that spark, but you came in, and what made you stay?
It was the fact that I had a buddy, which is our mutual friend, one of the headers in our world, and she knew you, she knew me, she brought us together, and that's when we really looked way more alike than we do right now. And
yes.
She brought these two people together that she knew that needed to connect, so that was really cool. And so then I would travel with her, help navigate the babysitting with her boys so that she and I could come together and travel to Brenda's place. And I knew that I wanted some connection still to the metaphysical world while I was still in the midst of going through my ordination process. And I came to Michigan pretty broken. Even at that point, I was denied my ordination the first time, and that was really painful. I had gone through all the classes and everything like that, and then they said, no, you still have to do more. And I really had my heart set on it, and I was still taking my antidepressants at the time. I was just in a relationship, brand new relationship with my now ex-husband, and moved across country, and I needed a connection to the metaphysical world. I it was so easy when I was in the San Francisco um, uh, San Francisco Bay Area. It's in the water. You just have to drink the water, and it's metaphysical. So that was, so I was kind of blessed in that way. Um, but here I was in Michigan, wanting to build a relationship and future with this guy, and I didn't know what to do. So I needed some kind of grounding, and I knew that by coming to Brenda's, I saw that she had all the stuff that I liked. Um, all the fun little rocks and gadgets and everything like that. And then I started, and I always wanted to do Reiki, but I never had I would say the opportunity didn't really present itself. And then the next month I was attuned to Reiki 1 and 2, just after meeting Brenda. So it just all, it all just happened. So, but I started to pick up the pieces, of my life at that point, moving forward.
Yes, and thank you. For whatever reason, there are issues that are unresolved. We just call them life, and most of the people feel that this is what's going to happen to them. This is who they are. This is their lot in life, and they can't do anything about it. It's written in stone. And when I started doing this, I realized it's not written in stone. You can change it. You can resolve those continued stories. And it's amazing for the simple fact that you can have instant growth, instantly, or you can watch it unfold. And so then there was all of these ways of living that started to come to the surface. And then I was told that I need to teach this, tell people about this, because it was changing my life for the better all the time. And I thought, I don't know if I can, but listening to Spirit said, I will get you the people, just do it. Who do you like as a teacher? How do you want to be? I'm like, seriously? And you're talking about a true introvert that never talked to anybody. So, all right, I did it, and out comes this person who I am today. What we have to understand is that you don't realize, you know who you are right now. Most of the time you're very content for what you have. You're happy about it, or you may say, oh, I don't like this, or I don't like that. But most of the time, this is your day-to-day living, and where you are is perfectly okay. You have to first understand that. You're perfectly okay. You are more than enough. And we have to remember to get you to know that you're a great person, and it's okay to start shining your light. Right now you can't see the light because there is so much energy loss from you. Every time we engage in a moment that throws us off our center, and when it throws us off completely, it creates like a diversion of who we really are. And then we have to readjust ourselves. And the reason why this occurs is because change is a very constant thing that's happening all the time. We just have had so much of it because we haven't had the ability to process. We have learned to pacify, we have learned to cope, we have learned to deal. And because we've learned these things to that we have to fit them into our life, that part of us just starts to disappear because there's so much clutter. And the energy that we use to, when we get thrown off center, the energy literally starts to, then they want you to describe that.
When we get knocked off center?
Yes. What happens to our life force, Jen?
It just, we've been investigating the idea of our auras, what happens to that. So, I know that I completely withdraw when I'm really faced with something that knocks me off my center. I withdraw. I shut down. I stop talking. I'll walk away from the situation. And I have to find a way to kind of gather myself. I'm thinking of a specific incident. For example, if I've been pulled over by the police for speeding, once or twice or more in my life. But what happens is I really feel the adrenaline kick in, and I have, I follow all the rules and do what I'm supposed to do and all that kind of stuff, get the ticket, yada yada yada. But then when I want to get back on the road, start driving again, my leg is shaking. I don't know if I can drive. I have to I'm really, really, really physically shaking by the adrenaline, by that really stressful event. And that's just, one example that I can really get into as far as what the feeling is and all of that.
Good. Well, the key word she said was stress. When you have that incident, it's going to be how do you react to that incident. So here's the incident. You are up at this point really balanced. The incident occurs. You become out of sync. How are you going to react to that moment? And everybody has these different moments and different reactions. So it depends on the given situation. So because of the situational experience, you have to then understand that that's part of change. Change came to you and you weren't ready for it, and you're like, wait a minute, what? No. And you're looking in your arsenal pattern or your toolbox of how am I supposed to respond to this? Okay. And if you don't really have something, you're going to reach as far as you can. Sometimes in the stress, it's fight, flight, freeze. And within those three are a whole bunch of ways of doing it. When people go into freeze mode, sometimes that is the shutdown mode. Or it's a repress mode, a depletion mode. Whereas some are in a fight mode. Now I'm writing a blog about what is a real true rebellion, or why did somebody really rebel. And it's all about the energies. It's not about just that I'm a rebel and want to fight. It's what causes you to notice either when that energy became out of sync, you will either abandon yourself, okay, and that's another form of pulling away, because you don't have a way to react with it. You don't know how to fix this. But a rebel will be the one going, oh my God, I noticed you took something, and immediately start to be the rebel against that energy, so it'll never happen again. And it fuels you and it forces you to respond, because you're going to do it. But over time, because your subconscious mind wants you to resolve this so it can have its energy back. Okay. Yes. Teresa.
I have a question. How about when you abandon yourself or retreat?
Yes, same thing. Retreat is a nice way of saying that we have said we're not playing in this. Okay?
Right.
But when it comes to abandoning yourself, it is when you have to look at, I don't have the strength anymore. I don't want to do it anymore. I don't have any way to resolve this. Since I can't process it, then you will come up with different answers. And so retreating is another form of abandonment to some degree, because you can't resolve it. Now, in a different mindset, a retreat would be, that's the best thing to do. Don't stick your hand back in the fire. Okay? There's a difference between that definition. And before we go any further, I'm going to ask you all to define what retreat is so that we can actually find the different levels of what it means. So who wants to go first with the definition?
Retreated for 3 years and still in that. And my definition is to back away from the situation and go within instead of being out there. I live in Edmonton. There's over 1 million people here, and I'm a country girl, so I stay home a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, well, a lot of it is because your energy field is that you feel everybody coming towards you, and all I can see is that it's like static. So it's not that you're trying to be a porcupine, but you feel all of these needles hitting you. And so we need to help build up that aura, or create a muscle, we might say it is, with that frequency, so you don't have to, first of all, attract them in with that attraction factor. That would need to be addressed. And then we would build up that aura so that when you are in that space, not really attracting it, but it's there, you will actually repel it without even knowing it. Okay? You won't even bring it into the observation field. And if you do, you'll be going, oh my God, I used to react so differently. So it's about that growth change. So we'll end up getting there.
Better.
Good, good.
It's gotten better in the last 6 months. Prior to that, it was very difficult.
Okay, and so we're going to help you out, help you understand what your soul is saying that you need to address, what you need to do, and have a different relationship with the frequencies. Okay, anybody else want to talk about what retreat means to them?
I have a definition, because when you first said retreat, the first thing I thought of was the military definition of a retreat. Even though I'm a minister who actually provides retreats and facilitates retreats, it's interesting. The first thing that I thought of, and that's to get away from society, but in this confrontational situation, a retreat is a very decisive move in a military way to move as a unit back to regroup, recenter, so then you can be even more forceful in the next instance in a battle or some such thing.
So rebuilding, taking time to rebuild so that you can fight again. That's interesting. Well, anyways, I will read what retreat is from a dictionary point of view. The active process of withdrawing, especially from something hazardous or unpleasant. The process of going backward or receding from a position. Or it's a period of solitude. And that's where, in one respect, that's what you want, is that period of solitude, pulling away, creating that time to think, to regather, to recoup. But it's the way the energies are and the way they play, and that is what we really have to come back to remember. Further down the road, you're going to learn about quantum mirrors, because everything is a mirror of something. Have you ever gone to a fun house or looked in a three-way mirror and it just looks like it goes on forever and ever and ever and ever? And that is what I'm seeing when I'm looking at you. I see all of these things that are echoing, and I see energy being not just duplicated, but just more and more after layers of stuff happen. It literally builds up of loss for you. Energy loss will happen for you, which leaves you less in this life. So now what I want to point out is that why does life present you with hell? Okay? Now there's different definitions of hell, but the one thing they want you to I want to point out, or they want you to point out, is the soul. You have your contract, you're ready to come in. Now, the patterns that have not been resolved will represent themselves, represent one more time to see if you have resolved it. If you've come up against it and seen it as an enemy, then you haven't resolved it. So then there's more work to be had. If it presents itself and you don't even see it and just kind of walk on by, then you have, check, you've passed. You literally do not have to continue that lesson because it's done. You're not losing any life force. You now can move forward in a different way. Now, hell and heaven are states of being. And as we be human, then we get to choice of, we're the sum total of our conscious and our unconscious mind of things that haven't been resolved or has been resolved. So that's why you see a lot of people happy. That's because in their brain, that caudate nucleus in their brain is not so full of fear. It has fear, but it has a lot more joy, and that is how they're going to approach their situations. It'll also depend on which brain that you're going to use. And then it will determine which sensory system you're going to have a dominancy with. So we're complicated beings, but yet it is very quite simple. If you're unhappy, then you're in the middle of your lesson. What's causing it? You already know the answers. And the first dissertation I did, they changed the rules, and so I had to redo it. And so the second paper I did, I said, screw it. I'm not tearing apart this wonderful thing it took to create, because really it's a book. It's all about knowing. And it isn't about the abilities. It's about how you read code every single day. Every day you go out, and if you're driving down the road and you see a red light, you go, ah, dang, I always get red lights. And that's your way of saying, I know that a red light means to me this way. And you are reading your definitions, you're reading your code, because the code is replicating itself so that you can see it into a solid, and everything around it is how you defined it. And I'm helping you to, how do you know? And then I'm helping you collapse the energy that is all the negative emotion that keeps it alive and keeps it creating that way. I'm helping you to process it out so that you can become in sync in a much healthier manner, so that you don't have to be bombarded with red lights. You don't have to be bombarded with bills all the time. You get to really change that way of thinking, and it breaks the chain that you have within yourself. You following so far? Any questions to anything I said so far? Because they just gave you a ton of information one more time.
Okay, I have a question about being unhappy in the middle of the lesson.
You are either going to be, as the observer, you are either going to be in balance with love, or you're going to miss the mark of love.
Okay.
When you are out of sync with your true identity, which is spirit, you will then all of a sudden start to over-identify, and these are the things that you over-identify with are the things that are asking for your attention to resolve. So all of this unhappiness or the feeling of is your way, your soul's way of saying to you, hey, can I get your attention long enough with a whispering opportunity? Now, what's a whispering opportunity, Jen?
When I've been noticing anomalies, just a little nudge that, even positive or negative, but still a whispering opportunity, is that little nudge that says, you got to pay attention to this. It's just enough that it's coming to your attention, asking for you to pay attention to it.
Going back to giving you a story. All right, let's say I'm miserable and I say, I pray. Thank you, angels, for helping me, take care of this issue. So the angel comes up and whispers in your ear, and you don't hear it. All right. So then you go back and, it's not resolved. Thank you, angels, for taking care of the situation. So the angel then comes up and go, hey, and you're like, you still missed it, okay? Because you're not trained to see it. You're trained to see your hells. You're just not trained to see the positive, which means you have two energies that come at you at once, and so far all you've seen is the negative. So the angel will keep doing whatever it is. Every day you pray, every day you see that you get no results, every day as the observer you're like, nothing's changed. And so the angel's again saying, I've rearranged it so you can have the answer. And since it's not coming in your mind, then it has to get your attention. So how many times does it take until it gets your attention? From a whisper to a bee sting to a bitch slap, it's going to get your attention. Okay? So, when you're unhappy and you start to realize, wait a minute, I'm not happy. Oh, why? How do I know that I'm unhappy? And what am I unhappy about? Now, this is where it gets confusing, because people will go into the theory and talk about it, but they have no tool to resolve it. And that's a bad thing to some degree, because for every thought we think, we create chemical peptides. And your frontal lobe How a thought is created, if you just imagine a tree, okay, you got the tree trunks and then the branches. And every time that you think about it and obsess about it, the more that this tree grows and creates more branches. If you were not to really think about it, then what's called glial cells will come along and vacuum up that thought, and then you forget. But the ones that are meaning they left an impact, okay? So you're going along in life, everything's going great, and all of a sudden, bam! And you're like, what the hell just happened? That's what's called a force change. Your soul was trying to get your attention, and it created a force change, or I call, in other words, a bitch slap. It forced you to change. You didn't want to before. You were the observer, staring and staring, going, oh, and over here, the universe is saying, you got to stop doing that. Hello, you got to stop looking at it. And you're like, leave me alone, leave me alone. And then all of a sudden, it'll come out of nowhere and then hit you. And it makes you change your thought pattern. So you'll look over there. Joan Rivers. She didn't want to learn anything about money. Her husband handled that. Her husband handled that. I'll never need to learn that. Because she kept thinking her husband was going to live forever. And then he died. She didn't know where the checkbook was. She didn't even know how to balance checkbook. She just figured if I had checks, I can continue to write them because I must mean I have money. She had no way of comprehending about the money issue. The universe bitch slapped her so hard, and she had to learn through such major force of change. And now she's really good with money, but it took so long, that transition. You know, she could not go back to just, I know nothing about money and I can live there. No, the universe says you can't live there ever again. You have to be over here and look, and you're at this. So when you're talking about a whispering opportunity, it is when you didn't even realize that you prayed. We have so many thoughts. We have 41 thoughts per minute. And in the given day, if your mindset is or your subconscious mind is at a certain peak, that means there's something that needs to be addressed. And you won't even know it. You just be sitting there deep in thought. Yeah, I need to do that. And then you're off and you forgot to listen to yourself. Well, the universe says, oh, that's like taking notes, saying, okay, I'll take care of this. And then the universe comes along and does what? Remind you of what you were thinking, even though you didn't know you were thinking it. Okay? So in some ways, you're talking to yourself, or your soul's talking to you at all times. Now, we get caught in our little comfort zones. And so the everyday life of feeling and thinking and being, we start to close in. So unhappiness becomes part of our comfort zone. Unhappiness becomes so natural that we don't even know we're unhappy. It's serving us somehow. And so we kind of invited as a friend, and we became best friends with unhappiness. Now, Jen, you know where I'm going to go with this. Best friends with fear. Would you like to talk about that?
So in our jam sessions and all that good stuff, we've been discovering how ingrained and in relationship I am with fear. When I was 6 months old, the remnant energy of the twin who was with me in my womb, not my womb, my mom's womb, he was a womb-mate, left. The twin wasn't born.
Back away your mic just a little bit, Jen.
Is that okay?
Can everybody hear okay?
Yes.
All right, keep talking, Jen.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
So, my mom remembers when, but I'm not. Is that better?
A little bit. Just talk louder.
Okay. So, anyway, so my mom was actually remembers during the pregnancy when the twin was absorbed. She didn't know that that's what was happening, but that's what was happening. So anyway, so the remnant energy of this twin left when I was 6 months old. After being born, I was 6 months old, and Brenda and I tested all of this, and so this remnant energy left, and that's when I knew I was going to have to do all of this by myself. And my mom actually can remember that me being a little 6-month-old baby, she remembers when she wanted to give me all this love and she knew I wasn't taking it in. And then so she and I have talked, and she wondered if there's something wrong with her and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, so then I became best friends with fear. And that's when fear really took over and it's really, that's what we're conquering. That's what I'm conquering now through the healing work and all that kind of stuff is overcoming that, healing that. But yeah, so, and my mom tells me how I was a shy little kid and how fearful I was and all that kind of stuff.
So one of the things that's happened is that Jen, the way that she got thrown off her center was how is she going to react to this energy? So fear, if she's not friends with it, will start to attack her. But if she's friends with it, then it just kind of hovers, and she somehow has that form of safety that it's not going to harm her. She understands it, but it actually creates her to stay in her comfort zone. It is her way of how does she process that moment. And she learned to adapt it into her world. She learned how to become best friend. Best friend sounds harsh, but yet it's like it says to her, hey, Jen, well, you don't want to do that. And then it'll tell her all the fearful things why. And so then she takes and has a precaution of, okay, I won't do that. And all it is that it actually caused her will to be paralyzed, and it stops her from stepping into her greatness. Like, for instance, she knows that she's supposed to be much further along in teaching things and doing things. And right now she's like, I think I'm supposed to be right where I am. And again, she's more than enough, and she's exactly where she's supposed to. The change of her soul wants her to go in this direction. And how do you get the person that's in the human suit to listen? And that depends on you. Because you're consciously saying, I'm picking and choosing, and you know what? I choose not to do that. But in your contract it says, if you are at this age and you haven't learned this, then I have to employ this. We actually put a safety protocol of saying, okay, if I haven't begun to resolve this issue, then it has to come to the surface. And we get to choose whether it's on a whispering opportunity or to, have a proverbial brick wall hit us, or however we want to do it. We have all these different stages to decide how do we want change to occur. Now, knowing that, the group consciousness interplays with how we're supposed to do it. We were told that pain and suffering is who we are. And that pain and suffering is how we're supposed to do it. And some people have said pain and suffering really tells me when change is about ready to happen. So it depends on how you, again, start to define it. I've learned that pain and suffering is an option. And we don't have to believe that which the group consciousness told us. Karen shared something with me today, and is it okay that if I share that with the group? Thank you. And she can elaborate a little bit more, but for all her life she's been studying, growing, doing things, but not once did she ever know, and how did you describe it? That you could actually, she said the door was open, she could walk through. She didn't know she could just open the door and walk through. She didn't know she could create the opportunity to do it. How else would you?
Things just happened.
Okay.
And I just thought things happened. I think we're so brainwashed when we're children with the fairy tales of how life is going to be. We hear classic phrases like, wait till you grow up and have kids and see what happens, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Or wait until, or when you are, blah, blah, whatever, that things just happened. But there wasn't any cause and effect, really. It was just, they just appeared. It just happened.
So when did you have your awakening, or your epiphany is
2
what I
years
call
ago.
it? 2 years ago. And what caused it? What caused the shakeup? And how did it happen? In a whisper and a bitch slap, or wonderful?
It was actually very quietly. I was just
Quiet. Okay.
sitting in a friend's living room talking, and suddenly I went, huh.
Yeah, usually that's the face we all get right there.
I thought things just happened. And I remember Tracy looking at me like, huh? Nobody said anything, but they just kind of went on with the conversation, but the look on Tracy's face was, huh?
Yeah, and that's what I call an epiphany, because it didn't have to have a big explosion, but it makes your face go, huh? And it makes you think, and everybody has their own unique feature when an epiphany occurs, when they connect those dots, when that awakening occurs even further. It's so beautiful when I watch people go through them. You know, they're like, but I feel so stupid. It's like I should have known. It's like, no, you weren't until this precise moment. Now let's take and enjoy it. And that's where you witness and you kind of explain to people what had happened, because you don't want the glial cells to come and vacuum out all of the beautiful work you just connected. Now usually it won't, because of the emotional ties that you created with that epiphany. But if you keep it quiet and don't talk about it, you will actually cause yourself to forget your great way of the epiphany of learning. And time doesn't help, because then time says, okay, you've learned that, push it on, let's go forward. And so then we have a tendency sometimes to repeat ourselves. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, any questions so far? You understand that you are a spiritual being, that's your true identity. You have a soul that has collected all the information, and you are deciphering and cleaning it up and filing away and disregarding what you don't need. This is where it gets tricky. People say that Earth School is where you come to learn your lessons. For how it goes, because there's something very important, and I'm asking them right now to have them trying to help me remember. But it was lacking something, because when you're learning a lesson, you know, it's not that it just happened and now you're forced to learn your lesson. We've already discussed how it actually creates a whisper and opportunity. But when you're learning it, just remember it is from the time of the conception, up the time of conception, up to the age of 7, that's your first experiences. This is where you're going to define, make decisions, create those values out of those beliefs, that's going to say, I learned my lesson. After that, that's when life starts to starts handing you one thing after another that's not usually healthy, is because we have to unlearn the things that we learned as a kid. Okay, we had to learn them so we can live within that space up to the age of 18, and then after that, we're supposed to unlearn them. Now there's a problem with this, because the way the brain functions, and that we as a spiritual soul chose to stop making the unknown known, caused us by the age of 20 to stop growing, but now just to age. From age 20 on, you're just replicating reality every single day based on wanting certain emotions, happinesses, to reoccur. And so then you will start calling in people that to help you get those feelings, those good feelings, and you're trying to figure out how come you can't capture those moments. So basically you get stuck in a loop, and then life becomes where you just age. And you have learned different ways to adapt, cope, deal, and to chronologically age with it and create different pathways, unless you're forced by having an awakening. Teresa, you just said, oh my God, I need to change who I am. And you knew that something had to change because you didn't like the relationship that you had with your husband, right?
Well, I'm still with him. No, but I don't.
Right.
I don't like the relationship and how it is.
Correct. And you said,
I really realized, actually, I was so busy and caught up in my world and what I did and trying to be successful that I didn't really pay attention to him.
okay.
And now I'm paying too much attention to him and what he's about, and learned that we're not compatible.
Ah, well, it's about growth process. And this is where, at the time you're supposed to be together to learn what you needed to. And then there is a growth process that occurs. I used to attract hellish men in my space. And then I said to God, why? And then after my first divorce, I had God lined up 12 guys. I'm like, okay, they all have a common theme. I don't want to do this anymore. And this is really before I had my healing tools. And I said, well, I don't want this and this and that. Well, why am I putting up with it? Because I figured that's what I was supposed to do. I had learned as a kid that you put up with it. And so I started to say, no, I don't have to. Because that was one thing, as a fire person, you can't say no. And if you're a kinesthetic fire person, that even's worse because it starts to destroy your thymus. So every time I would say no, I ended up causing a backlash on myself. So then I attracted Scott in my space. And completely different than any other man that I've ever attracted in. We got married, and it wasn't until last year that I had grown and he grew, but we grew separately. The dogs are happy. I think they agree. So, but we grew separate, and I didn't know how to get back in a line with him. He was defining his world with me one way. I was defining the world in another way, but we were just out of a line, and I could not live that way anymore. So, at this point, I had changed a lot about me, so my husband couldn't even hook into who I am anymore. So at the time, it had to make a decision. Did you want to grow with me, or did you want to just grow in another direction? And he had to stop and think, why was I even with my wife? Yes, I loved her. You know, I mean, he doesn't remember some of this, but he's also shy about this. I'm not taking away his choice of voice, but he usually, when I ask him, he just shuts up and doesn't say anything. He can talk at any time.
Well, it doesn't look like he is.
I know, he looks so cute, don't he? But he had that contemplation, and it was 3 days of hell, but in his mind, he realized that he had built this wall of anger between us. And he said he wanted to remember to love me again. He wanted to love. So he ended up, and the way he says it is, he says I took and I dipped him into the volcano and it burned it all off. But another way he says it is just the anger just kind of burnt right up because he chose not to focus on it anymore. He says it just went away. Oh, okay. That's a clue, because sometimes we lose our voice in the whole process of the change. Let's look at this clue to help her out. Is that if the losing voice, has anybody ever lost hearing? Okay, lost their voice. They didn't hear. So help me out. In order for her to hear us, we have to understand the clue. She can talk to us, but she's unable to get the information from us. The communication is lost. What is the clue? Where'd my deck of cards go?